Hello, everyone, and welcome back to one of these fun interview episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike, and today with me a special guest from, I guess, halfway across the country. To get us started, could you please tell us, sir, what's your name and the game we're here to talk about?
Hey, thanks, Mike. I'm Bobby Torres. I work with 302 Interactive, and we are making the Commission 1920.
Perfect. Why don't we start with something that is probably familiar. So for people who aren't familiar, which is probably a good chunk of people, what is 302 Interactive?
Yeah, that is a loaded question. I'll keep it brief so we can talk about the Commission. 302 Interactive is a interactive, as the name implies, development studio. We really specialize in emerging technology and experience. Our vision is to really create experiences that make everyday life playful and fun. And our mission is really to empower game developers to change the world, like really make game development and game design at the forefront of everything that we do.
Wow, that is I do appreciate the it's like a noble mission tied to kind of what you're talking about here. So we're here to talk about specifically Commission 1920, which I kind of was running through it a bit too. So in my head, it feels like a weird combo to me of like I almost think of like those old like early iPhone mob games meets like a more strategic backend. Is there a better way kind of that you describe it to people and they're like when you're like, how do you describe this game?
Yeah, that's a good description. If you've played like management sims, if you were on Facebook early on playing like Mafia and whatnot, it takes some elements of resource gathering that you would remember from a game like that, and really adds an element of over the map conquest and strategy that you might find in like a Paradox game. But I want to set expectations really on site there. And it's not, we're not a Paradox studio. So our game is not huge and made by, 100 people, but we really enjoy some of the titles that have come from Paradox, and a lot of their games have inspired us to make the Commission 1920. So it takes, turn-based strategy, management and Mafia and resource gathering and map painting elements, and puts the player in the position as the Don of one of the 5 Mafia families in this fictitious city that we call New Shore. That's really based off of 1920s like Chicago or New York.
It's interesting that you chose that because obviously 1920s Chicago is the city, but it's funny because like when you say New Shore, to me I almost picture like New Orleans kind of when you just hear that name, just because like it's the 20s, like mobs kind of a lot of places. So I think would be interesting to talk about is, so I was talk about there are 5 families, and you should be the Don of one of them is my understanding. Instead of going through each of them kind of, what is kind of, was it like your favorite family to work with the team kind of to design?
Yeah. So each family's got its own characteristics and their own motivations. The 5 families, and if you're really a Mafia head and into Mafia lore, we had to do some research, and we work with 2:30 a.m. Studios to kind of come up with this concept. It's an original concept from them, and we worked with them as development partners to make it. And they did a lot of research. I mean, a lot on the origins of like the Mafia and La Cosa Nostra, which is kind of the Mafia in North America, is what they talk about. And oftentimes when they talk about La Cosa Nostra in the Mafia, they refer to it as like, our thing. This special thing that we have is how they talk about it. So these 5 families are based off of these 5 Mafia families that were growing in power in North America around the 1920s and 1930s era. They're not direct correlations by any means, but that number of families and some of their characteristics and like the ruthlessness was derived from some historical elements.
Yeah, no, I knew five was always that. Like, I think it's New York was influenced five bosses, and I thought Chicago was kind of similar. Um, is there? So looking at the list here. Well, I'm gonna butcher these names. And being Italian, that's offensive to everyone. Uh, Boginia, uh, Calcese, the Donna, the Junio, and the Roca family. Is there one of those families that like really sticks out to you, or is it like each of them you're like when you play kind of you could play as any of them because you've done it enough?
Yeah, so my favorite family, and we have like this fun game that we put together. It's like, who's your Don quiz? One of those like fun, like internet quizzes. We put together one of those to kind of figure out like who, which Don's characteristics you personally kind of lean towards. I am a Boggiana for sure. So the five families are Boggiana, Junio, Roca, Calesi. Oh man, I put it on the spot. I'm definitely missing one. That's only four.
You said Bojana, Kalesi, Dono, Junio, Roca?
Donano. That's
Donano,
that's
okay.
the last one. Yeah, the Donanos. Funny enough, there's a pizza parlor next to me that is called Donano's Pizza. But yeah, and so the Boggianas, I think in our game, you're going to see characteristics and traits that favor, investment and like gambling dens and basically investing in what is like a classier racket rather than like theft, petty theft or prostitution and things like that. So each family is going to have their own characteristics, whether they thrive in like a high class neighborhood or they thrive in like a low class neighborhood. They all have their own special characteristics that have to do with intel, recruitment, racket management. Those elements really make up like the core of the gameplay and the resources that you are managing. It's with your finances, you're investing in your rackets, and with your family, you are basically putting them in neighborhoods to go ahead and establish more rackets and maintain control and gather more intel points so you could go ahead and learn more about each family and make moves against them.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, kind of. So obviously, the mob is known as something for, we'll say, extreme violence at points, kind of. Especially when you're talking about it. How did you guys kind of balance this while making this game? Of like, obviously, it feels to me that the foundation of this game is like the like managing it versus like going out and taking hits of the game. How did you guys kind of manage that level of abstracting out the violence versus like making a point of how gruesome this lifestyle can be?
Yeah, we in working with 2:30 a.m. studios, we definitely didn't want to glorify like crime or violence in any way, but we did want to make a mafia game. That was for sure. So in that, looking at games that have come before the commission, like there's a game in the late '90s, Gangsters Organized Crime, that was a big inspiration for the original concept, and it is heavily focused on the management elements of building a crime organization, right? A crime institution that maintains control and power in kind of a city.
So that makes sense. So obviously, the other thing I'm curious about is the entire time the mob has existed, the federal government, let's just say, is trying to breathe down its necks to stop it. Is that any level of like mechanics in your guys' game kind of like make a point of like understanding the like illegalness you're doing, or is it kind of like to you you feel like the enough consequence of like the other families to kind of deal with it instead?
Yeah, there's consequences to building your power sphere in New Shore. That's measured in something called heat. So as heat increases in a neighborhood, that you start to attract more attention from the authorities. And with more attention and more heat, the chances of your family, and the various ranks of your family getting caught up, or getting bagged by the authorities increases exponentially. So when you establish a new racket or maintaining an existing racket, your associates and your soldados and your capos become at risk. So maintaining heat is an instrumental part of the game, and on top of that, can be weaponized by basically going ahead and bribing officials to go ahead and increase heat in rival neighborhoods.
To be that's a very interesting kind of challenge. Kind of, if we dig into that a little bit more, kind of, so as we talked about there, we could you kind of influence kind of to like mess up the other players kind of in the experience. How did you guys kind of balance that kind of like, can the AI then do the same thing back to you? Or is it kind of like, because there's limitations obviously but being a computer versus a human being, kind of like, how do you balance that with like the difficulty of the game?
Yeah, balancing has been a lot of the work that has been done during development. Because when we make tweaks to the systems and the original game design in this type of game, it's balancing is always something that has to be revisited. It's part of the plan in making a game like this, is that rebalancing is done periodically, and it is a challenge. But as a player, that balance also, you definitely feel that balance in the management, balancing your heat versus how aggressive you want to be towards other families. Are you going to war? What's the cost of going to war? Are you prepared to defend yourself from encroachers in your neighborhoods and things like that? So you're constantly thinking and striking that balance as a player from turn to turn.
How difficult would you say the game kind of is, kind of, because I'm thinking, so I think there's like a line of this, right? So I think on the broadest scale, something like Civ, I think is the easy line of this game, whereas we talked about like Paradoxes, the roughest of
Yeah.
Paradox games is the hardest line, kind of.
Yeah, and I'm happy you asked that question, because when we set out to make the commission, the goal and like the stated purpose was to make, for lack of a better description, like an entry level uh, management game that could be in the realm of Paradox, where oftentimes when I play a new Paradox title, I'm watching and reading a lot before I even start my own campaign, because they're so challenging. There's so many variables to think about and strategies to develop and whatnot. And as a player, sometimes you definitely doubt yourself when you start a campaign and are immediately destroyed. So we wanted to make a game that was accessible to people that are experienced in the management sim realm, and also players that are new. So the game's difficulty from that like Civ to Paradox realm, I think we incorporated like elements of like Sims player onboarding and kind of the plethora of management variables that you'll see in a Paradox game. But I would say we didn't strive to go that deep, where there's just so many that you kind of have to play the game on a spreadsheet.
So that makes sense. So I'm curious, kind of. So one of the, I think, bigger complaints about this genre or similar genres of games, when you look at these heavy sim games, is a lot of players feel upset if they go and play 20 hours and then they can lose the experience. I'm curious, kind of, how do you either control for that type of player, or do you just kind of be like, that's kind of a thing with the genre? We try to make it easier, but like that can really happen.
Yeah, so a lot of the replayability and the longevity of campaigns comes from, one, being able to play different families, and two, the AI adds a variety of flavor. And then on top of that, with the commission, we wanted to include more focus, I think, in a lot of ways on like telling the story of New Shore. through the basically through playtime. As you play more and play with each family, you kind of you will unlock more journal entries is what they're called in the game to basically dive deeper into the lore. And we spent a lot of time most recently with our writers to really write this out and kind of tell a compelling story that kind of happens in the background of playing the game.
So in these journal entries, I'm kind of curious now that you kind of brought those up. I assume journal entries are like either events that happen in the world, or like from this person's point of view, or times in the city. Do you ever get a moment like in these journals, kind of like when you see the same event from different families' point of views, or like each journal kind of this fully unique thing? This is a different part of the world.
Yeah, and that's a really great question. It's a little bit of both. It is definitely a little bit of both. There is a stream of events that occur that you can see from different point of views from different families, and there's also unique events that happen that kind of build up on one another. So it is, that there is that story there that you get various perspectives from, but you will get unique perspectives from some families that somebody who's executing that hit. You'll see how that planning unfolded, like in a letter specifically to like a capo from the Don saying like, hey, they're going to be here at this address, and you'll see from another family's perspective the outcome, right? The outcome of like, well, we lost Uncle Tony.
That's a good. Actually, that's a very cool way, kind of. I think of telling the world of like seeing it from the different things. I like the idea of like you get the event out of order. And you're like, wait a second, I read this before. Like you could start seeing those kind of cool things. Very much so. One of the things I'm curious about as we're talking is, so as we talk about, this is Commission 1920. There was a game you guys came out a couple years ago. I believe it was just called The Commission, and I believe this is like kind of a remastered, reimagined version of the game. If you wouldn't mind kind of talking about that a little bit more and kind of like what has really changed between the two games.
Yeah, back in 2018, we released the Commission Organized Crime Grand Strategy, and with that being kind of like our first self-published title, we had the same intent to create this mafia game that was set in New Shore. With the Commission 1920, we basically redesigned and overhauled the entire game. So it's still a turn-based management strategy sim, but with far more depth and it's a different take on our original attempt at making a game in this genre and with this theme.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I'm glad to see you guys kind of dig into it because I was kind of reading stuff and I was like, oh, it noticed that like the first commission had, we'll say, mixed issue reviews, and I feel like a lot of the complaints were like I feel like the strategy and not being enough there. It looked like. So kind of as we dig into this world, some more to get to tail into this. So there was a plethora of mob media out there, kind of like in movies and TVs. If you had to pick like the one you have seen that describes the world you've made the best, is there like a piece of media out there that really sticks to you, being like, this is kind of a lot of this world is based off of?
I wish I could say there was one, but there are a lot of influences. Certain scenes from The Godfather definitely influence some of like the characters and even like some of the art style elements. And other video games, mafia themed games also influence that. So I can't really pinpoint one, but even like The Sopranos, that Tony Soprano and kind of the story that's told in that series kind of influenced some of the lore of New Shore and some of the dynamic between the families as well. So there's a lot of influence across all of the mafia content that we derived New Shore and the families from.
The Sopranos, I think, is an interesting one because I feel one of the flaws if you're trying to like learn about, because a lot of times people like watch those things even though they're not actually view what happened, but like kind of get an idea of like how these structures works. I feel like Sopranos is one that like makes you understand the structure of a family the best, because like you watch like Casino's a good one, or like even Goodfellas. I feel like you don't see kind of like how that structurally works on the grandest of schemes, or well like where they're very clear in Sopranos being like, here's the boss, here's the guy under the boss, here are his people, here are his people, here's how the structure works. Here's what when someone goes away. Like they're very clear to how long they had to like explain this, and I feel like your game, the more we talk about, it really sticks with me the idea of like as you're building out this structure and like kind of making sure you have people going in different places.
Yeah, I think you have a really good point there. The Sopranos and I think the Godfather series are the ones that come to mind in terms of um, you know, media that really depict kind of some of the elements of the game in terms of family structure, which is a huge element in the commission.
Let's see. So the game is The Commission, 1920, Organized Crime Grand Strategy. Nice short title. Really, really slides off the tongue. I'll give you that one. The game, I see you guys have some alpha come up and stuff like that. Do you have, and it's still coming soon listed on Steam? Is there any kind of level of when the game is roughly coming out sometime next year, or is it still really as you guys still figuring that out?
Yeah, we have some indication of when we want the game to come out. I would say right now we are looking at like within the first 3 months of 2021. So we're trying to, as indies, I will candidly say this, we're trying to navigate some of the AAA hype and figure out, what is the right launch date. But definitely early next year. We are wrapping up, some of the ends of development and doing a lot of testing. If you don't mind, Michael, I'll make a call to action here to the people listening. And if you guys really enjoy the genre or are new to the genre and want to, play the game and be a part of the development process, we welcome that openly. So we have a Discord channel that we, talk with players of the old game and the new and manage our testing through that. So I'm glad to share more information on that. We're welcoming as many players as possible. We want as much feedback, and we take that really directly into consideration, and it does influence the game. So you have the opportunity to really be a part of that.
Nice, yeah. If I remember, and hopefully I do, or people remind me, I will make sure to link down to the Discord, because I assume this is a general join link, down
Yep.
in the description of this podcast and all that fun stuff. So that way anyone who is interested can go check out the game and, as Bobby said, kind of work on that development process, kind of really see kind of a game that's different states. I assume. I assume people in Discord. I assume there are Discord builds that people are just like, this broke. Thank you.
Yeah, and as hilarious as that seems, it's so helpful. Like it really is, especially when we're talking about balancing the game and making it feel hard or feel challenging once you get into the harder game modes and whatnot for those like experienced players. Like playing the game a lot is really what we're at the stage of the game that we're actually at in development. We're just playing. We're playing so much commission. We're playing with other people. We're playing in the Discord. We're really trying to strike that balance.
Oh, that makes sense. So yeah. So as we said, I will try to remember to link over to that one. The game is The Commission 1920. I assume go wishlisted it on Steam. Anyone else I should be sending people to go check out your guys' work or the game?
Our website that we just revamped a little bit, commission1920.com. We are going to be adding more information about the lore and the themality of the game, and plan on updating that with content regularly. Between our Discord and our website and our Twitter, that would be the place to really stay in touch. We want our website to be interactive and fun as much as the game is. So as we continue in our development and after launch, we're going to keep on updating as much as possible to really add some depth.
Well, Bobby, thank you for taking time out of your probably very busy day right now to come and talk about the game, and I look forward to seeing more about it in the coming months.
And Michael, thank you so much.
This episode is partially brought to you by the Humble Choice program. Did you know Humble Bundle has a great monthly subscription service that lets you get a ton of video games every single month? That's right, from plans range from $5 to $20 a month, you get a hold of a bunch of free games they have available to you. And you could use our code down in the description below to go and sign up. It would help our podcast and help you see what great games are available for you this month.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another of these fun interview episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike, and today I have with me a guest from, I think, the other side of the world legally? Somewhere close to that. Do you mind introducing yourself and the game we're here to talk about?
Sure. My name's Dave, Dave Lloyd, and one half of Powerhoof, and we're working on an adventure game called The Drifter.
Yeah, maybe to get started then, what is The Drifter? Because it's not like we're in a car and drifting down a road, I assume, so...
Yeah. So we're calling it a pulp adventure thriller. It's basically a traditional point and click, but we're making it quite fast-paced. And you play as a drifter called Mick, who's murdered and then finds himself alive again seconds before his death. And he's got to try and maintain his sanity and escape people hunting him, prove his own innocence for this murder, and unravel some grand conspiracy. And so lots of out of the frying pan into the fire situations to try and make it sort of rush along at a rollicking pace in a genre which is often quite slow-paced, I guess.
So I'm going to ask the immediate dumb question. What to you defines the word pulp? Because obviously I think the pop culture version of pulp is Pulp Fiction. So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
Or like Indiana Jones, another one too. So I'm kind of curious kind of how you define that term when you guys are talking about the game this way.
So I'm sort of influenced by a lot of like airport fiction. So like the sort of thriller novels you might pick up to just like read on a whim and like real page turners.
Tom Clancy stuff, kind of almost.
Yeah. So drawing on a lot of like Stephen King as well and Michael Crichton, and then so that those sort of style thriller novels, and also film, I guess, as well. So a bit of John Carpenter and even some sort of 70s exploitation film. So very schlocky, having a lot of fun with it. Not so serious that it goes into horror territory where everything's very grim and dark all the time. So it's a lot more sort of action focused. Yeah, does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. So it's weird because the way you describe it, so you were kind enough to give us some codes to poke at the game. The way that you describe it right now, in a weird way, if I just heard it off the street, I would picture I hate to say lower budget, but there's two of you, version of Fallout New Vegas, just because that's the story that's stuck in my head from a game point of view, is the idea of like that game opens with you being killed, and you wake up being like, what happened?
Mm.
And that's why I was very curious kind of how you define pulp because of that.
Yeah. It really comes from the fiction, the sort of the novel kind of style, like genre fiction background, I guess. I kind of like the word as well. You don't hear it too much.
It's a great buzzword. If everyone's we have a pulp game, they're like, what? What does that mean?
Yeah. I guess originally it referred to like novels that were basically, you may as well just like stick them in the like wood pulp and like turn them into new fresh paper because they're kind of not really worth that much. But because they have this kind of cult following because they're so they don't try and be fancy art or anything. They're just like, I just want to write something that's really entertaining. So that's kind of where it comes from.
Yeah, I've always thought of pulp as like not serious stories, but like it's funny because the topic could be very like say Indiana Jones on paper, like it's this very serious thing. People's face get like grueled off of it, but like watching it, you're like, oh, no one's taking themselves seriously at all.
Exactly, yeah, it's fun. It's like and stuff happens to entertain, really. Like it's not trying to be a literary fiction kind of, not trying to be too fancy. Though there's a lot that I guess goes into it that borrows from the the same principles in making a good story, I guess. But really, the focus is just try and make it entertaining.
No, that's fair. So I always have the Steam page up next to me, kind of make sure I keep my train of thought going. And you are a point-and-click game. As we talk about it really slow, I have a thing here on your Steam page that I'm going to call you out on, and you need to explain yourself using this Look 360 technology. It's not an actual technology.
Yeah, so I'm kind of experimenting with how to best get the game onto consoles. So I mean, originally it's made to play with a mouse. You as with traditional point and click games like Monkey Island or something, you've got the cursor, which is basically what you're using to say this is what I want to give my attention to. So you hover over a hotspot, could be anywhere on the screen, and the character, and if you click it, the character might walk there, might interact with it in some way. And so I wanted to have that work on consoles without having you to have to control this cursor. So the way it ended up functioning was basically a dual analog stick system where you can walk around with one stick, and then the other stick controls the direction you're looking and highlights hotspots in the kind of radius around the player. And that seems to work quite well. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I haven't really seen it done before in that manner for a 2D game. So I'm pretty happy with how that's working. It seemed to get a good reception as well. And it means I can put it on Switch and have it feel at home on the console with a controller in your hand.
No, that makes sense, because I was kind of curious when you were talking about that, because, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought the Sony redid at least some of the LucasArts adventure games kind of like for PS4 and stuff. Did you draw any inspiration from those, kind of looking how they got that to work on controller?
No, not really, because I think most of them tended to either have... So I think Thimbleweed Park you could walk around with the analog stick, but then you basically had to just toggle between all the hotspots on the screen. And so it felt kind of clunky, like you'd still prefer to play it with mouse. And so I've been trying to get something where, you could kind of feel pretty much like this wouldn't be better with mouse. And I'd be happy playing it with a controller. So trying to get that kind of clunkiness of it, the sort of things that are left behind from it being primarily a mouse-driven game, trying to take those things away. I mean, the way other ones do it is to literally still have a mouse cursor, but you move that around with the analog stick, which I really don't like. That feels really clunky to me. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to talk about clunky, that is the clunky way of doing it. Being like, yeah, you don't have a mouse, but we made you a mouse? And you're like, that's why I'm playing on my TV, because I wanted to play with a mouse. Thank you for understanding this one. So one of the things I think that drawed me originally to a game is you have a very interesting art style, and I think the idea that you're kind of talking about this like setting, you said 70s world, kind of, it's funny because to me this is like the 80s, 90s like video game PC looking world to me, so I'm kind of curious kind of your inspiration for that art style and what drew you to it as you're making it.
Yeah, I mean, so the game's actually set turn of the millennium, so it's actually not really set in the 70s at all, but it's definitely trying to evoke some of the 70s kind of John Carpenter era film, more so than more modern film. So there's a lot of like 70s film and the music of that era as well. So the soundtrack is kind of quite based on that. Visually, I guess the other thing from the 70s I like is the way that you have a lot of, probably the 70s and the 80s, the way cities are depicted especially in sort of dystopian kind of film stuff like RoboCop, where it's meant to be in the near future, but it's basically just New York or whatever city it is, Detroit, I guess, and then it's like the city's really gritty and falling apart, and so that's kind of the feel I wanted for the city, and the art style. Going for something which is really high contrast, so a lot of light and dark, and it's obviously pixel art. And Barney, who's the artist, it's got a real knack for animation. So getting a lot of really over the top pixel art animation, a lot of spectacular kind of things that happen throughout the game to really highlight sort of the drama, I guess, and exciting things happening.
So has the game always kind of had this very kind of a specific but unique look at the same time to it, or have you been playing around doing art styles kind of like as you're developing the game?
It's sort of had that from the start. The way we're developing, and I'm working on it full time, and Barney, the other guy in Powerhoof, is working on a separate project most of the time. And then, so I've been doing placeholder art, and to make that a quick thing to do, I sketch it in just like a couple of colors, so like a light color and a dark color, and maybe a couple in between colors. So that means that my mock-ups end up being really all about the light and darkness, and then that kind of ended up becoming a bit of the style as well. So that worked its way into Barney's art and had the style nailed straight away. It was came together quite quickly. We've done a few adventure games together before, and he'd kind of, I guess, been working through a few different art styles, kind of changes, getting a bit more color, and so one of his goals was to get a lot of color difference between the different scenes. So you'll see there's like some scenes have a big red, like lots of red tones, and then other scenes are all blues and cool greens and things. But then also a lot of maintaining a lot of contrast, which is the kind of the iconic look, I think. And the pixel art using pixel art is partly because you can animate it quite fluidly without having to hire lots of animators, basically. So that's kind of a main reason for using pixel art, alongside the fact that we both really just like the look of pixel art.
No, that makes sense. Also, yeah, I think people don't. It's funny because pixel art has kind of like that two-edged sword of it is on the grand scale of things relatively easy to do if you understand it, especially when you're trying to like change stuff quickly. But it also is a thing of to make it look really good, it's way harder than people expect it to be.
Yeah. I think it requires the same skills as any other art, really, to take it to the next level. But yeah, I'm a big fan of. I follow a lot of pixel artists on Twitter, and I'm always amazed at the sort of things, the images they can make.
One of the nice things from a development advantage point of view is whenever you're questioning colors or want to change colors quickly, pixel is one of the easiest ways to do it because you're like, oh, I can just, these are all pixels. Grab this chunk of the screen, make it this color, and I can quickly see kind of what this looks like in blue or this or that and kind of do it relatively easy. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that one, but I always find it easier than like being like going to the 3D artist being like, now what if we had a streak right here or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it works well in combined with sort of low color palette. So using a limited amount of colors, and that's where you get a lot of high contrast as well. So you've got you've got this sort of jaggy pixel line between the lights and the darks, as opposed to a blended brush stroke, and that it's quite evocative, I think, as well.
Yep. So one of the things I need to call you out on as we're going through here. So you have my new favorite trend, I feel like, on Steam, which is you don't have a release window, you have when it's done paper.
Yeah.
What is kind of, we're hitting the end of 2020, which I'm assuming has either been really productive for development or horrible for development, depending on how you're set up. But at the same time, kind of, how is it kind of the game's feeling to you, and do you have any level of launch windows in mind, or like betas in mind, or anything of those?
I think it's unlikely it'll be next year at this point. So yeah, that's why it's. I mean, it's so frustrating as a gamer when I see that like I say, oh, I'm excited about this game, and then look at when it's launching. Oh, when it's done. Oh, just tell me. But yeah, no, I totally would have already blown my original. If I'd written when I approximately like what quarter or that I thought it would be done, I already would have blown that. So it's still kind of in that sort of when it's done. It's at least a year away, basically. So it won't be in 2021, unfortunately. And
then I assume, at least as of now, no plans of like early access or betas or anything else to give people their hands on it. That's kind of like as it pops up, will just pop up scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, early access doesn't tend to work so well with story games because once you've played it, you don't have the reason to replay it, and you want to play it in its best possible form. So yeah, we won't do an early access or anything, but I'll probably release the demo that you played closer to launch, but we might also do some like timed early times where you can just play that demo for a few weeks or something to have a quick look if you're interested early on, just to get sort of some buzz and stuff like that.
Okay, nice. Let's make sure that people know where to find the game. So the game is The Drifter. You are on Steam right now, or anywhere else people could go find the game?
Yes. You can go to thedriftergame.com, but that just links to Steam. Or you can search for, or you can go to powerhoof.com, which is our company website, so powerhoof.com, or search for the Drifter Powerhoof or something like that. That'll show it up.
Okay, perfect. Well, I want to say thanks again for taking time out of your morning while you're waking up to have this conversation, and I look forward to seeing how the game all turns out.
No worries. Thanks for chatting to me.
This podcast was a production of the SWW Show. To learn more, go to theswwshow.com. Remember, you can follow the show on Twitter at the SWW Show. You can follow me at Mikey_Maroney. You can follow AJ at LowSeatBoy. Remember, new episodes premiere on Friday, 9 a.m. Central Time on anchor.fm/SWW and podcast services around the globe.